Welcome back. Today we have a special guest on This Week on Campus, the new Executive Director of the Iowa Association of Community College Trustees, Emily Shields. Welcome to This Week on Campus, Emily.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so recently President Biden announced a desire to provide free community college education. How can the IACCT assist in the implementation of that?
Well, as with most federal proposals, it's far from simple, right? Free community college sounds pretty simple, but to be honest with you, the funding system for community colleges and most of higher education is incredibly complex. So we will be assisting even during this legislative process of considering what next steps might be, because at this point, President Biden has made a proposal. It's one that would have to go through and get approval from Congress. So there's still a long ways to go in this process, and we'll work with them to make sure that it's a proposal that would work for our state, work for our students, and allow us to achieve what I think are shared goals of increasing the accessibility of college and making sure more of our students who start are successful.
Okay. Now, not a lot of students really understand or know about the IACCT. So
Yeah.
what are kind of the general functions that you guys do, and what are some ways that you guys help students?
Yeah. So in general terms, our function is to advocate for Iowa's community colleges and their student, staff, faculty, and communities. So we're always thinking about how can we make sure our community colleges are successful, and ultimately the institutions are only successful if the students are successful. Community colleges are open to everyone, and it's our job to make sure we are welcoming everyone and helping them to achieve their goals on our campuses. And so a lot of what we do is work with policymakers at the state and federal level to ensure that funding is adequate for us to be able to offer competitive programs and support students, and to make sure that there are policies in place that support those goals. So right now, the Iowa legislature is in session, and they have been since I started in January. So I've spent a lot of my first 4 months on the job working closely with the legislature, securing funds for state general aid and a lot of our workforce training programs, but also working through issues as they come up on everything from certified nurse aides to driver's education to butchery programs and a wide variety of things. Community colleges meet a lot of needs in communities in terms of education, training, and many other things. And of course, we've been working through COVID as well. So that has meant I spend a lot of time at the federal level as well. There have been a number of relief packages coming to the colleges. A lot of that funding is going directly to students. And so we've worked to negotiate that at the federal level and to ensure that that comes down in a way that campuses can get those benefits out to students and make up for their losses during what's been a really challenging year. So a lot of what we do is that advocacy and lobbying piece, but at the same time, we're also focused on bringing the folks at community colleges together, helping them learn from each other so that they can do their best. And in terms of students, one specific thing we do every year is our student legislative seminar. We ask every campus to bring a group of students to the Capitol. This past year it was virtual, of course, but in normal years, we would have students here in Des Moines. We have a session with them to talk about advocacy and lobbying and how they can be involved in making their voices heard. We have legislators talk to them, and then we actually have them go up to the Capitol and talk to legislators. I think it's really important, again, our end goal as a community college system is an educated workforce and educated populace. And so students are the goal, students are the key. And so having them at the Capitol, having their voices directly heard in the conversations that are going to affect their ability to get an education is very, very important.
So you mentioned students going down to the Capitol for the forum. Is there anything else that students can do to assist in the mission of the IACCT?
Absolutely. I mean, I would say first and foremost, contacting elected officials. In addition to our day at the Capitol, we work to, in particular at the state level, because we get such important funding there. We often will have letter writing campaigns or other ways that we're encouraging students to contact their legislators and tell their stories. Stories are so key to any advocacy effort. And so, when we're talking about funding, we're up there throwing around millions of dollars and that kind of thing, and it really loses meaning. But when you hear a student say, listen, this gap tuition assistance program allowed me to get a job that pays this much more, and now I can better support my family. Or, this concurrent enrollment program means that I will be saving thousands of dollars in student debt. People really need to hear those direct stories to be moved to take action in a way that supports our community college students. So we're always trying to find avenues for students, again, to make direct contact with the legislators who make those important decisions. I would say both at the state level and the federal level as well. The federal level, again, there's a lot of conversation happening about community college right now. You mentioned one thing at the top with Biden's proposal, but there are a ton of conversations about community college infrastructure, free community college, Pell Grants, all kinds of things that would affect us and our students. And again, it's really important to get involved in that legislative process. So first and foremost, of course, vote. The people who are in those positions are making decisions that affect each and every student and their ability to get a college education. And then make your voice heard, contacting them. I've worked in politics and government for a long time, and those contacts really do make a huge difference in terms of the decisions that are made. And so that's email, phone calls. It doesn't have to be visiting the Capitol at all. Legislators, especially at the local level, are back in their home communities every weekend, all summer, all fall. They have events and forums. There are any number of opportunities to meet with them and talk to them about your specific issues, either what's going well or what isn't, right? If there are barriers that are preventing you from successfully completing a degree or your chosen training path, what are those and how could those be improved at the federal level? So I would say contacting them and also contacting us. So if there's something, me personally or anyone on our team, if there's something that you see as a barrier to student success, we want to know, and we want to be able to get involved at the state level, federal level, wherever it may be, to work through those barriers.
Okay, one thing that community colleges are really worried about right now is their budget. A lot of community colleges have very tight budgets.
Yeah.
How does the IACCT work with said community colleges to help get better funding and maybe just get a little more room in their budget?
Yeah, so that is an ongoing conversation at all times, because I think that's one of our most key roles as an association, is really advocate, again, for the resources it takes to educate students for their lives and for the jobs they want to have in the community. And a lot of the programs that community colleges offer are very resource intensive. We're teaching specific skills that require equipment and things along those lines that cost a lot. And we really need to advocate for that, both with legislators and also with the business community, because the business community are strong partners of community colleges. And I think they have a strong understanding of what it takes for us to educate the workforce that they're looking for and helping us to identify those resources. So community college budgets, as I mentioned, are complex and have changed a lot over time. There used to be more, in the past, it's been discussed, a third, a third, a third, local property taxes, state, and then tuition. It does not look like that now. Tuition makes up a much greater portion of the budgets that campuses are working with than it did in the past. The local property taxes are a very small piece. The state then comes in the middle there, and there are some federal resources that come our way in terms of specific tuition programs or specific grants or that kind of thing. So when you're talking about being so tuition dependent, the budget really has a lot to do with enrollment. And it has been a challenging year for community colleges on that front. We normally see an uptick in enrollment when the economy is not doing well. This year didn't look like that. With all the uncertainty of whether you could go to class in person, whether you'd be safe going to class, whether you're going to get the education you were looking for, our community colleges have continued to offer in-person safe education throughout this pandemic, but the enrollment has still dropped. And so when we're so tuition dependent, we really need to bring that back up for budgets to work for us to be able to continue to offer things. In addition to that, that state general aid does just make up a really critical piece of the puzzle for community colleges to be able to plan for their budgets every year. So we spend a lot of time on that. It's over $200 million in state general aid. Every year, we're trying to figure out whether we need an increase based on rising costs. This year, we asked for a 3% increase, and that negotiation is still in process. So that's a big part of the role that we play with that. And then, of course, the federal proposal, what that would do is change where that tuition amount is coming from. In all likelihood, that mix of funding would still be the same, but the tuition part of it would be coming from federal and state sources and not students. So that's an interesting dynamic, and it would be interesting to see how that plays out. But that's a lot of what we're working with in terms of trying to come up with those resources. And we have great leaders in our presidents and our locally elected trustees, and that's what they're spending a lot of their time thinking about as well.
Okay, do you have anything you'd like to add for us?
Well, just that, I'm passionate about community colleges and the students we're educating. I really enjoy visiting our campuses and seeing students, coming from a variety of circumstances, learning all kinds of important things for our communities. And so I'm here every day trying to advocate for you all. And again, I hope you'll get involved in our events and opportunities to contact elected officials. Your voices are so key to all of these really important conversations that are happening right now. And I hope you will find ways to make them heard.
Okay, well, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it, and we'll be right back on This Week on Campus.